The reason we're here, everybody knows right now that we got information from the union regarding our strike. For those who might not be aware of what we're going through, the people in this meeting are mostly all members of Local 3 who worked for Spectrum Cable before going on strike in 2017. In 2017, when we went on strike, it was clear and apparent early on that we were not going to be able to fairly bargain with the company. They had no intention of it. So that's what forced us out. I'm not sure if people were aware, but a lot of things that we always pushed forward and did on our own, like most of the t-shirts that we made and put up during the rallies, that was something that the strikers put together and we did on our own. All the radio spots that we did or something the strikers did and put to our own. The banners that were put up, the trucks that were bought for that, a lot of that stuff was stuff that the strikers did on our own to try to push forward, to help out, to put an end to the strike. So what we just find out through social media, actually, we weren't given a meeting. I've spoken to the stewards, and also they were found out mostly through the same way about where we are right now in the strike. Through social media, we saw that there were several NLRB filings that stated that the union leadership came to a settlement with Spectrum Cable in order to remove the NLRB charges that were in place, settle any other outstanding disputes, and also agree to no longer represent the workers on strike, which would be us. So that information came to us by way of social media. And that's where we're at right now. The part that we can't understand is exactly where does that leave us as far as everything related to our strike. So from my understanding, I'll just give a couple of quick details of what we believe happened, because right now everything we're still operating on some type of speculation. So it was said that there was 180, once the company withdrew from the union, that they had to pay an unfunded liability. From what we have been told, because we can't have a clear answer yet, is that it was supposed to be $180 million that would be given to the union to be able for that unfunded liability. Now, that $180 million would go directly to the union. The company was responsible for paying that no matter what. Right now, we are unsure, but it seems like the settlement was for nothing more than paying out the unfounded liability, which they were already scheduled to pay, which would mean that the 5 years that we put in onto the strike would have been settled for something that was supposed to be received anyway. That settlement amount would have equated to probably 7 years worth of benefits for the workers that worked in the company in total. If that's the case, with the amount of workers only left, it was in the first year of our strike that everyone's benefits were cut off. Additional credits to pension, any type of medical benefits. We have workers that I know exhausted all of their funds and savings just on medical alone to try to withstand this strike and continue to fight without any benefits being there. So for that $180 million settlement to go directly into the pension fund, if that's part of what has happened, that's fine. But to say if that is being taken as part of a settlement and then no longer representing the workers, that's what we have. That's what we're trying to find out, if that's what can happen. Secondly, there was a vote to go on strike, but there was no vote or indication of how to come off strike. So that's something else we're looking to find out. We've reached out to the NLRB to try to find out all the charges that were filed on behalf of the workers for unfair labor practices during the strike. But now that they have dropped those charges, the question is, can any of those charges now be picked back up and moved with? If this happens, this is Spectrum Cable showing, not just here in New York, but in the US, about being able to literally buy out a union strike. The biggest thing is that's hard for us to understand is 5 years of sacrifice. And this is one of the things that kept us going a lot during the strike, and a lot of things we did was phone calls I would get and stories I would get from members through 5 years, especially in a city like New York City, for us to be able to stay out and fight for that because we were trying to back a union that we supported. To hear if this is the case, that a large company like Spectrum is now basically trying to buy out that union and have them not support us, is very difficult to try to understand. If anything, that was not their sacrifice alone to give. We were the people that sacrificed for the 5 years in order to do it. We were one of the ones that went without pay. So now we finally get to the point 5 years later where everything is happening with the digital divide. It was highlighted because of everything with COVID. And now the city is going to invest and able to try to move forward and help people, get online. So billions of dollars are now slated to come from the federal government into these cities in order to fix the problem. $1 billion of it, I believe, here is slated for New York. So it's my understanding, if this is correct, that the city may be looking to now what was previously the internet master plan in order to try to have new companies come in and create competition, that they might look to try to instead give it back to the Spectrums of the world in order to solve it. It's an easier way to solve the problem instead of put a Band-Aid on instead of fixing the real problem. New York is still supposed to be a union town. They would not want to work with a company that is a known strike breaker, a known problem with labor. It would not be good business for the city and elected officials to do business with them. So at that one point in time where we finally waited 5 years worth of sacrifice and struggle to be able to get to put on that pressure, to then have it right there and then have the strike settled, to kind of technically remove them from having a strike hanging over their neck, that is hurtful. Because the sacrifice that we waited to get to this long and get to this point where we finally have a point of pressure to them and have that removed, that is difficult. So the question is that legal? Was that able to be done? Is that something that we can fight and look into? And I believe we won't be able to look into it and get into any further without being able to speak with attorneys. During this time and during this fight, we tried to put pressure from different angles. Once we started on our own, the strikers came together. Like I said, we put together our own money during times of strike, and we put out ads on radio stations. The flyers and billboards that we put together were mostly on ours. The trucks that we rented to drive those around was all efforts that we put together. We started podcasts to be able to talk about it. We started television shows in order to be able to keep our name in the spotlight. We got together and put a business plan together to present to the city to have them take over the cable company. They liked it, and when they didn't act on it, we then went around and we formed a company, People's Choice Communications, in order to be able to do it ourselves and join with the customers to own this cable system for the city, and started providing internet service for residents throughout New York. We were able to offer them, by partnership with the FCC, most of the residents we provide service now, I believe all of them, are able to get service for free at no cost. We're able to give them $11 laptops. So at a point in time where we had the support of the union, where they told us that they did support us, but we were able to do this with no resources, no economic resources, and not much of any other resources on our own to build up to a point to do this. So now to have this run in parallel, if we would have had resources, we've been able to get so much further than we did. But with people telling us that it was a good idea, but nothing that we can do at all, we were still able to get to the point to be able to put an additional avenue of pressure. If this is going through and they're going to shift this now to be able to give money back to the Spectrums of the world to do it, where does that leave companies like People's Choice Communications, who right now, without anything else being put in place, is more or less like the last organized voice of the strikers right now. Where does that leave them? And does that now let the city think that technically, because the union settled, that they no longer have to be able to be held to doing business with a bad company like Spectrum? The things that Spectrum did during the strike have not gone away. It's not like because the more or less what it looks like was a payout from Spectrum to the union to settle. It does not negate the fact that the things that they did in the city, not only to the workers, but also to the city itself, were still being put in place. You can see on the screen, there's multiple things. The lawsuits, the amount of violations that they had in the city, those things can't be removed, whether it was not providing services to the areas they were supposed to build out, hiring workers from out of state to do the work that was meant to be for workers here, whether it's the attorneys general lawsuit where they were taking advertisements and offering people services for internet speeds that they knew they couldn't provide. None of that stuff and none of those violations that they made to the city have gone away. And what hasn't also gone away, while they might say from the union side that it has been settled, is not settled as far as the workers see it. So you may have a small group of people, and this is true, and it happened, it's so blatant. You'll hear times of money being changed under the table where they would say a union sold out its members, and it would be expressed in a way because they didn't get the type of contract that they wanted, or they didn't get as many of the benefits or lost some of their contracts. If this is true, it's never something so blatant as where you have NLRB rulings stating that a monetary settlement was given, and it states in the same document that the union is no longer represented because of that settlement. So I just want to bring up on the screen, and most of the stuff right now, we only have information from through social media. The biggest thing I wanted to bring up, local union number 3, Charter Communications, have ended the battle that has gone on nearly 10 years. A settlement agreement has been reached that resolves all the issues between Local 3 and Charter, including all matters before the NLRB. Local 3 will no longer represent the Charter employees in New York City area. All litigation between the parties relating to the strike and Charter will pay an agreed upon amount of withdrawal liability to the pension fund. So the part at the end about this is disappointing to them, but they have been able to resolve all outstanding issues is the part that we definitely have a problem with. As far as the strikers are concerned, all outstanding issues have not been resolved. So now the question is, what do we do next? People's Choice Communications is a company that we ran in parallel, and it started out as a way to fight back against the strike, but it turned into so much more than that. When we found out we were able to provide service for people that need the service. We get calls now from people that are thankful that they're able to use the service to be able to go online and do schoolwork, apply for jobs, access that they didn't have before. And it was another way to offer a different option to the city. Once the city stated that they wanted to kick Spectrum out for the violations that they already created, the main problem was people had no other choice or nothing to go back to, so they weren't able to put any teeth to that threat. So the only thing was to be able to create another option, to allow a company like Spectrum now to buy their way out of it, like they bought their way out of the Attorney General's lawsuit, is going to be hard for anyone to go. I mean, this is a strike on unions altogether. If a major corporation can buy out the strike of members of a union, paying off the union, if a company can be that bad, what stops them from doing it to any other union or any other company doing it going forward? You could have any union or any division of the union say, in the best business interests of the union, we would, no longer represent those people. The biggest power of being part of a union is the ability to strike. How many people will support a strike if there's a possibility that after 5 years of sacrificing long on a strike, that the union can abandon you and say, okay, we're going to no longer represent you? That is a tremendous blow to any power that the union would have if they know that the workers are not willing to go out and be able to strike because they don't know if they're going to have the support of the union behind them. So what Spectrum is doing is much more major than just one strike in our group of a couple of thousand people. It's kind of like a bellwether for the way of life that could happen for all unions going forward. And that's why we believe we need to have this talk. And whether it's PCC continuing to build out and do new things, or it's us standing on a standalone entity where it's a strikers association that can legally battle now keep up the battle against Spectrum, because no matter who they paid or what they settled, the things that they've done to us during this strike have not gone away, and we need to have some type of answer and accountability from them for it. I also want to make sure that it was understood that a lot of the fight, unless it was the stuff that the union was talking about happening behind the scenes, the things out front were done by the work and the resources and the money, whatever we can pull together, of the strikers. So that part is not going to stop, and that part is not going to go away. And now the question is, how can we continue the fight and continue to get more resources and be able to do the things that we initially started and pull forward? So I'm going to go now and start to answer some of the questions that has been coming in. The first one I have is, have we contacted the union leadership? We've reached out to the union leadership. The only thing that we've been able to get so far is said that the union has made a decision. We haven't got much more information than that. The letter that I showed you in the mail was the only other information that we have so far. We did get a good bit of information about some insight into it though, but that was actually from a Facebook post of an internal letter in the company of the company to the striking workers inside, and we were able to get from that. As far as from our side, there hasn't been much. Can you form another union? I see is another question that was sent. I don't know at this point. And I think one of the biggest things that we're doing here is trying to figure out how can we get somebody that can answer these questions legally. We have no idea where we can go, how we can move until we get an answer from an attorney about, what has happened, what has transpired. We have numerous NLRB charges that need to be picked back up. We have a lawsuit that was filed with the general foreman, and where they took, Spectrum said that they wanted to get rid of all the gray hairs, and they took all the general foremen, all the senior staff, demoted them, and put new people off the street in a position above them that they had to report to, and tried to put them out in the field to try to push them out of their current positions. So is that another lawsuit that can be taken back up? We have multiple lawsuits with people wanting to return, them asking people to forcibly return to work in order to get payout of vacation pay or sick time that they were entitled to. Can that be another lawsuit that we can take? With so much unclarity right now about everything that's happened, we have no trust in knowing if those answers that we previously got were correct. So now we have to ask all those questions again. Are there other class action lawsuits that can be taken against the company? The question I see is also about the clause that they don't have to disclose what that settlement was or how it was put together. The question answer that I got from the NLRB so far, I believe, was that the settlement was made, but I don't think the NLRB saw the details of the settlement. Either way, I can't get it. So if we can get answer to that, that's another question that we have to, most of these are going to come out within have to come out and come through an attorney. So I do see, one thing I want to say as well, and I'll try to put it in the chat to everyone right now. Leaving this meeting, the biggest questions are, what are next steps? So I'm going to put an email so everyone will be able to reach out to us with any questions that they have beyond this, and also for us internally, what we would be able to do for next steps to be able to move on and try to figure out how do we get past where we are right now on the strike. Do we have to raise money to secure an attorney? It's quite possible. And I think this is just a start, but we want to try to look at next steps as well. I mean, one of the hardest things to try to swallow is the fact that it was our sacrifice that took this 5 years to get here. And it's not like we weren't being bribed the entire time we were out. We all know this is New York City. It's not like another state where if you lose a job that was a career job, at least the cost of living is close what it might be to go to another job and start back over. Not in New York City. If you build a career and you have if you have an apartment, if you have, without kids, without anything else, it's incredibly hard to start from where you built a 40-year career out to go back to zero. To have that taken away and stay out for 5 years just because you want to do the right thing and you want to support the union and you want to try to, to try to make it where everybody else doesn't have to go through the same thing you're going through. We had those bribes too. Up to today, we still get the calls from the company, and it's so easy when you're at the worst and the bottom and everything is drained away from you and everyone is telling you should go back. It is so easy when you're getting calls from the company and they're telling you to just come back. All your problems could be solved if you just, cross over and come back. For us to have as many people out as we have now after 5 years on strike, we've been getting bribed from the company to take that pay for 5 years and stuck it out. For the union to only have to just sit there and hold out. So there's a piece that we can hold over them in situations like this, where it might be something where they needed to settle in order to be able to move with the city. We waited 5 long years to get to that point. That's the part that's hurtful. And it also means it seems like Spectrum is doing it. Why? Because the same way they've been able to stifle us and have people in the city not know that we're on strike for this amount of time, they do it because they say, what are they going to do about it? All of those strikers that stayed out, we won't give them anything. We'll pay off the union. And what are they going to do about it? They're going to make noise for a couple of weeks. They're going to be angry. They're going to complain. But what are they going to do about it? And that's the part. That's the disrespectful part that's the part that hurts. So to be able to have a way to keep fighting, or for some, as far as we wanted the union, and just to be able to sit there, to be at least a legal block to say that there was still an outstanding strike against the company, to have that moved away for a payment, what it seems a payment that was supposed to be received anyway, if that is truly what was undisclosed in that settlement agreement, is bad. The renewal for Charter's franchise, as far as the last information that I got from a meeting with Do It, the franchise was not renewed for any of the city agencies. And that's because I believe, I'm not sure if it was Tennessee, but there was a lawsuit where the cable companies were trying to fight to not have to pay a portion of the franchise agreement. I believe it was related to also like public access television, some other things. Because that lawsuit was unresolved, the city didn't know if they would have to make changes to the franchise agreement to account for that. Until that lawsuit is resolved, they didn't want to make any changes. So people are just operating under the old conditions of the previous franchise. So it's still another level of pressure, but the question is now, who's going to be there to apply that pressure If it looks like it will no longer be the union, if this is true, it would have to be us directly. What we built so far to try to initially built to try to stop this strike with People's Choice Communications, that part is not stopping. We want to make sure that the city doesn't turn away from this now and use this as an excuse to go back and do business with Spectrum, because you paid out the union to be able to settle. That has no bearing on the workers that are a part of that strike. As far as this for us, none of this has been settled for us. We want to make sure that the city continues to invest in programs like they started to be able to add options that can give us a way to get out from under the thumb of companies like Spectrum and allow us to continue build out and do the work that we started doing and been doing so far. And we want to find a way that the workers on strike can get some type of resolution as to exactly why what was done was done. Is it legal? And can we continue to fight? Because at least for us, the fight is not over. We've battled too long and been through too much and made too much sacrifice for someone else to tell us that this is over. That was not anyone else's sacrifice to give away. No one else. Everyone else was getting paid during this entire 5 years. That was our sacrifice to say, okay, we had enough, especially when the only thing that anyone else had to do was just be there.